And if you're playing a drinking game, how many times we've said blow your load that you have taken 2 shots now? Anyways. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Nerds You're Looking For podcast, a weekly nerd culture podcast that discusses the culture through various segments. My name, of course, is Patrick Kuhn, alongside my co-host, as always, that Tyler Hunt. How's it going, man?
It's going really, really well. How are you?
I'm good. I mean, football season started again. Gronk did some work for my fantasy team on Thursday. I had an awesome show in Bloomington, so everything's good.
Yeah, I played a guy who had Gronk this week, but I had Julian Edelman, and he didn't do too shabby. He got a few receptions. He got me like 15 points, so that's actually probably probably about what I expected out of him. So I still have hope for this week, but Gronk definitely did some work.
Yeah, for sure. 3 touchdowns, and it could have easily been 4.
Yeah.
So I was pretty happy with that. My wife filmed a really embarrassing video of me celebrating. I think when he got his 3rd touchdown, I was being pretty ridiculous.
I'll have to ask her for the video.
You don't want to see the video. You really don't, because you see my butt crack at one point. Because I try to jump over the ottoman into my chair, and I don't quite make the jump. It's real embarrassing.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, so I'm all good. So far so good with the fantasy team. In the past couple of years, it's brought me more misery than anything else.
Yeah.
But so far so good. I'm really looking forward to my team this year. I think I could probably win it all.
All right, cool. So you want to talk about something that our listeners probably care about?
Yeah. So if this is your first episode, we appreciate you checking us out. We normally start each episode by checking in. We call it What We're Into. We're still going to kind of do that, but it's going to be a little bit different this week. Tyler and I both saw The Visit yesterday, and we figured we'll just go ahead and go right into a full review instead of checking in. I know Tyler wants to talk about Sinister 2 real quick, so I'll give it to him here in a second to do that, but then we're just going to go into a full review of The Visit. So Tyler, what'd you think about Sinister 2?
I'll keep it pretty brief. There's not a ton to say about this movie. It did not have a lot of great hype going into its release, and it definitely wasn't a great movie, which is disappointing because I really, really enjoyed the first one. I know you liked it as well. And this one does have the Deputy So-and-so back, so it's kind of a continuation of the first one in a way. But the vibe of this movie was completely different than the first one. Like, you kind of see how the kids get roped into what they do for Bagul and their kind of side of things. And there's just a lot of cheap scares throughout it, which was kind of disappointing because the first one had a really creepy tone. And I don't know, it didn't live up to the first one at all, and it ends really abruptly, and there's a lot of strange things that happen throughout it. But honestly, I'm not going to rag on this movie quite as much as I thought I was going to, because I have The Visit on the mind.
Yeah.
And so that movie makes this movie look amazing. So, like, if you're going to see a horror movie this weekend or soon, and you have to choose between The Visit and Sinister 2, I will say, spoiler alert for our Visit review, I would recommend Sinister 2.
All right. Like you said, I really enjoyed Sinister. It's kind of disappointing to hear that the second one is just a bunch of cheap scares, because I thought the first one had a really awesome tone. Like you said, it builds so well in the first one. Yeah. It doesn't blow its load too early. And I really appreciated that. I didn't expect too much from the first one, and I was really, really pleasantly surprised by it. And I was looking forward to the second one. We were actually going to review it on this podcast, but then just the scheduling just we moved some stuff around, and it just kind of got to the back burner. And then the reviews weren't great. And so I just was like, you know what? I really like the first one, and I don't want this one to ruin it.
Yeah.
So I just skipped it.
So I will say IGN gave this movie a 1 out of 10, Sinister 2.
Yeah.
And they gave the movie we're about ready to review, The Visit, an 8 out of 10.
Oh, really?
So I don't...
Fuck IGN,
I know,
man.
right? I don't have any faith in their reviews anymore. Like, Sinister 2 was not great, but it wasn't a 1 out of 10. And
Who reviewed it? You have no idea, do you?
I don't know.
Because Matt Fowler does a lot of their TV reviews, and he does a really good job.
Yeah, he does, but I've never seen him do a movie review. Maybe he might have done a few kid movie reviews before, because I know he has children, but I'm pretty sure he didn't do either of the reviews for the movies that we're talking about here today.
Okay. All right. So, like we said, we're just going to do a full blown review of The Visit, which is the new M. Night Shyamalan movie. I actually legitimately don't know how to pronounce his last name because I've heard so many people do that joke that I really don't even know how it's pronounced anymore. Anyways, The Visit, it basically is, I'm going to give my quick synopsis real quick. A series of strange events unravel when a single mother sends her two teenagers to visit her estranged parents for the first time.
Nice.
I couldn't read for a second. Like, I stuttered through that because I couldn't read my own handwriting. Anyways, like always, when we do reviews on this show, we like to start off with broad strokes, and then we will kind of go into the particulars later. So, Tyler, a general overview of what you felt about this movie, even though you kind of already hinted at it.
So, this movie was not at all what I expected, and I should have known better. Like, why give M. Night Shyamalan a 10th chance
there you go.
at redemption? But when the trailer for this movie came out, I thought it looked kind of intriguing, and I thought it looked kind of interesting, and I started reading up on it, and I saw it billed as a comedy horror. I'm like, there was no comedy in that trailer, and this movie had a lot more comedy in it than I would have ever imagined.
Yeah, mostly from the little kid.
Yeah. Well, from the little kid, and there was even a few things with the grandparents.
Yeah.
There were parts at the climax of the movie that were gross out funny, and I don't know, man. This movie was all over the place.
Yeah, I feel like if they somehow figured out a way to get time travel into this movie, it would have been like my greatest hits of things I fucking hate. Because it was like shot in a way that it was supposed to be a documentary, but it was like a found footage movie, which I've talked a lot about on the podcast. I fucking hate because it takes you out of the movie, because there are certain points in this movie and in found footage movies in general where you have to, as a logical, rational person, you have to sit there and, why the fuck are you still filming this? Yeah. Put down the camera and do something. And every film now that does found footage has to rationalize why that person's still filming it. There was actually a couple of moments in this film in particular that I'm just like, A, why are you filming this? Or B, who is filming this at this point? Like, because there's multiple people that film at certain points, and I'm just confused at who's filming this. You never see them sit down the camera, and it's very confusing. Then there was also a ton of jump scares. That's all this movie was. It's rated PG-13, which I did not know until I went into the movie, and I immediately was just like, I don't think I'm going to like this, because it's hard. It's really hard to do an effective PG-13 horror movie. It can be done. It just wasn't done in this movie.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there's the M. Night just cliche twist that kind of starts the third act, and I was really kind of hoping that he would get away from that, because, I mean, obviously that's just a huge trope for him in particular, and it did not land for me. Not only was I upset that he did it, but it was like the most obvious twist, and obviously we'll try to stay as spoiler free as possible. So I want to talk about the twist, but I won't get in particular. So we'll try not to spoil anything for you if you go see this movie, which it sounds like neither one of us is going to suggest going to see this movie, but it really bugged me that he felt like he still had to do it, because there was moments in this movie where I felt like he was kind of poking fun at it. He was kind of like leading us down this path that it was going to be a completely different twist, and I thought he was kind of poking fun at it himself, which I would have really appreciated, but then it never happened, and then the twist still happened, and it was super lame, so that really bugged me.
Yeah, I won't give away the twist or anything, obviously, but I don't know how familiar, you probably aren't very familiar with SpongeBob SquarePants.
I've watched several episodes, but I wouldn't say I'm familiar with it.
Well, there is an episode of SpongeBob SquarePants that has like the same exact twist that this movie has.
Oh, really?
I'll tell you about it off air, but it's kind of surreal, like how much it reminded me of that.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a really fucking weird movie, man. And I know this is probably like the icing on the cake, and I know that you were probably planning on bringing it up, but it was also just a terrible movie going experience.
Oh yeah. We should have talked about that at the beginning. I meant to, but I forgot to write it down on my notes.
It was the worst movie going experience I think I've ever had in my life.
It's up there with The Crazies, and I think it's not a spoiler alert because obviously we've already said that we didn't really enjoy this movie that much. I would only give The Crazies the edge because I was really digging that movie, and the people around me were taking me out of the movie, and that was making me angry. This movie, it was annoying, but I wasn't really getting into it, so I wouldn't say it was the worst one I've had, but it was just a weird movie experience because this movie theater that we went to is the biggest one in Evansville, and so it's always busy, but because it's so big, and they do a good job of like putting multiple screenings if they think the movie's going to be popular. It never feels like it's that busy.
Yeah.
I rolled up on a weekend that I didn't think anything big was coming out. Like this wasn't even on my radar.
Yeah.
This was something that you had texted me earlier in the day. It was like, well, let's go see a movie. And we just decided to go see this movie. I rolled up and I've never seen it like this before. There were multiple lines going out into the parking lot. Yeah. It was ridiculous. It took me at least 5 minutes while in line to even get into the building. It was stupid busy there, man. And then, of course, it was so busy, I got up to the counter and I asked the girl, what the hell is everybody seeing? Because I couldn't see anything that, like, was worthy of this crowd. She's like, mostly The Visit. I was like, fuck. And it was like it was like a high school field trip there.
Yeah.
It was ridiculous.
If you would have told me yesterday afternoon that I would be playing it close to get a ticket to The Visit because it was going to possibly sell out, I would have told you to go fuck yourself. Like, no way that movie's doing that business. And I don't know. I guess maybe people are ready for fall and Halloween and PG-13. All the little kids can go see it.
Yeah, I think it's mostly PG-13 and it's a horror movie, and most kids can't see most horror movies because they're rated R.
So this movie to me wasn't this. Even the jump scares to me, I didn't jump. And I don't know. It made, like I said, it made Sinister 2 look so much better than it was because the jump scares in Sinister 2, while they were really cheap, they were also effective.
Yeah.
Like I legitimately jumped a couple times. They were just silly in this movie.
I jumped once and it wasn't even because of what happened. It was everyone else's reaction around me scared me more than the movie did. This movie has, not only does it have like 90% of the scares, and I'm using that in quotes, are jump scares, but they have one of the, if not the lamest jump scare I've ever seen. It's definitely up there.
Which one?
Where they had the camera sitting there.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
It's not a spoiler, so I'm just gonna go out and outline it for you. There's basically this old woman, and she has dementia, and she kind of sleepwalks, or whatever they call it, sunsetting. I don't know.
Sleep scratches and sleep stabs.
Yeah, it's really weird. And so they decide to set up this camera, these two kids, to film her at night, and she's like cooking something or whatever, and then she walks over the camera, but they have it real high, so there's a shot where you don't see her. And I'm just like, all right, here it comes. And it's just her popping up, screaming at the top of her lungs at the camera. I was like, that's the lamest fucking jump scare I've ever seen in my life. Because, I mean, they didn't even, it was completely like just blatant. That's all they were trying to do. It was literally the worst one I've ever seen. It was bad. But anyways.
I had nightmares last night, but not from the jump scares of the movie. Just from the movie-going experience.
Yeah, it was bad. Anyway, so let's go ahead and start talking about the story in particular. So what'd you feel about this story?
You know, as much as I think the found footage is worn out, I didn't think... I thought it was interesting that the girl's making a documentary or whatever, and it was shot that way. I don't think that it was done well, but I could see... I guess towards the end at the climax why she didn't stop filming certain things. Well, no, that's not true. I don't know. the story was shitty. I don't know. I'm trying
Yeah.
to make up excuses for it, but I mean, it really wasn't a good story. Something could have been done with the premise a lot better than what they ended up doing, I guess,
Yeah.
is what I'm getting at.
My problem with the story is that it felt like you were almost watching two different movies. Because there was this one documentary that I actually would have enjoyed seeing.
Yeah.
Where there's these two kids that their life has been really shitty. They've had a lot of bad shit happen to them.
Yeah.
And it's kind of them trying to adjust to that.
Yeah.
I felt like that was really effective. There was some really good character development in this movie. And then you were just watching a completely different movie with these fucking weird ass grandparents. And it just felt completely disjointed, and it felt like you were watching two different movies. One I really wanted to see, the other one I couldn't stop rolling my eyes at. It was ridiculous.
Yeah, almost everything that happened with the grandparents didn't make sense and wasn't explained.
Yeah.
I understand that they were suffering from dementia or whatever the reasoning was in this movie, but their behavior was not right. It didn't align with what dementia actually is, from what I know about it. So it was just M. Night Shyamalan making these characters really strange and weird, so that the movie was a little scarier, I guess.
And this movie has two of the most unrealistic characters I have ever seen in movies. And I'm not talking about the grandparents. I'm talking about the two kids. Right? They are the most well-adjusted teenagers I have ever seen, ever.
Yeah.
I am 28 years old. They are 15 and 13, and they are more well-adjusted than I am. Bullshit.
And they've had a ton of shit happen.
Exactly. They have, their mother apparently is depressed all the time. She's super sad all the time because she had this huge fight with her not her grandparents, her parents, their grandparents. They've never met their grandparents. That would fuck with somebody.
Yeah.
Their dad leaves them when they're real young, and they don't even understand why yet because they're just kids, but they're just still really cool kids. And one of them's like knows more about filmmaking than I do. And, the other one's a decent rapper, even though he's not good, but he's 13. So he's decent. Like, I don't believe that these kids are that well adjusted. They're super clever. They always have the little boy always has the funniest thing to say. And I couldn't get over the fact that they're unrealistic kids. They're movie kids.
Yeah.
And that really bothered me.
So where does this movie rank for you with M. Night Shyamalan movies? Like, what is the worst M. Night Shyamalan movie you've ever seen? Well,
you're kind of spoiling my nerd favorite, because that was going to be my nerd favorite, but we'll get to that later. It's better than The Happening, and I think I haven't watched The Lady in the Water in a long time. I think I've only seen that movie twice, and that movie's kind of bad. So I would probably put this above those two. I've never seen his first two, Praying with Anger and Wide Awake.
Yeah, I've never seen those.
Yeah, I've never seen either one of those. But yeah, I think I would put it before those two and only those two.
That's kind of where I'm at with it too. I as much as I hated The Village, I thought The Village was better than this.
Yeah, for sure.
Cool.
So performances.
Oh my God, the kids weren't bad, I guess. I think that the actor and actress that played the elderly couple were a little over the top. Maybe. I like Katherine Hahn a lot.
She was excellent in this
movie. She was great. But besides that, I mean, it was serviceable for a shit movie.
Yeah. I actually liked the performances. As one of the one redeeming quality of this movie was I thought the kids were decent. They weren't great, but I mean, it's kind of, it's hit or miss with children actors. You kind of have to grade on a curve. So I thought they were fine. I thought the grandparents did a really good job. I thought that there was some things that the grandma did that was a little over the top, but I think that was more the material than her performance. I actually thought that they did a good job. For me, that's really the only redeeming quality of this movie. It was that the actors brought their A game. It was just the material just didn't match it.
Oh man, this movie. I thought the actress who played the grandma was a little bit better than the actor who played the grandpa. The actor I don't know his name, but he wasn't that impressive to me.
Yeah, I'd seen him before. He's a character actor for sure.
I looked him up on IMDb last night. He's in like tons of shit.
Yeah.
And I'm sure I've seen him around and just didn't recognize him in the movie, but yeah.
It seems like we're kind of winding down, so we'll get to our star rating here in a moment, but I just wanted one more thing. I did say that the performances were the only redeeming quality, and that is true. I also want to point out that I did, however, like how it escalated. I thought it escalated really well. Just a lot of the weird shit kind of happened at night.
Yeah.
Most of it, anyways, happened at night, and I really liked how it escalated through the week. And so take that with a grain of salt, because it's what happens at night is kind of ridiculous, but I liked how it escalated well.
I was also a fan of how much old lady ass we saw in this movie.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, that was pretty awesome.
It was weird because I've never had that big of a boner while also seeing human feces.
Well, I mean,
there's a lot of old man shit in this movie.
I wouldn't go that far. I've had bigger boners seeing human feces.
Nice. Anyway, so star rating. All right, so I'm gonna give it. I really struggled with this. I wanted to give it 1 star, but I think I'm gonna stay on par with Fantastic Four, because for me, it's between Fantastic Four and this movie, between the 2 worst movies I've seen this year. So I'm gonna go with 1.5 stars.
Me as well.
All right, cool, man. So that was a little bit longer than our normal what we're into, but like I said, that was a little bit different than we normally do. So our next segment is just plainly called Comics. Tyler and I read a bunch of comics, and we like to spotlight 1 or 2 each week. So what are you reading this week, Tyler?
So I have 2 I want to talk about really quick. First is Outcast number 12. I've talked about Outcast previously on the podcast. It's written by Robert Kirkman, the same guy who writes The Walking Dead. It's a really awesome comic put out by Image, and issue 12 was the end of basically like their second arc. So like whenever the trade paperback comes out, it'll be issues 12 or 7 through 12. So it was a really good arc. This comic delivers every month that is published. There's actually a show coming out based on it, and I was a little hesitant at first because they announced the show like as the comic was coming out, and to me it seemed like a cash grab. Like we didn't even know if this comic was going to be any good, and luckily the source material is going to be really good for it.
Yeah.
And if the first season were to follow the first 12 issues, it would be a really solid first season. So I'm excited to see what happens with it. But like I said, just every issue has been entertaining for me. In my opinion, out of these 12 issues, there's not really one that stands out as being really weak. So if you're not reading Outcast, I do highly recommend it, especially with the show coming out. I know that I was disappointed that I liked The Walking Dead so much whenever it first came out on TV, because I was so far behind in the comic, and I'm still not caught up. So
yeah,
with that potential, I do recommend getting on the Outcast train now. The second one I want to talk about really quick is Arkham Knight Genesis. It's basically a prequel to the Arkham Knight video game, and it kind of shows how the Arkham Knight comes to be who he is. And I won't spoil who the Arkham Knight is in case you're still wanting to play that game. But this comic was very interesting to me because the game, once the Arkham Knight's identity is revealed, doesn't really go into much backstory like I thought it would, like how this person came to make these decisions. And once his identity is revealed in the third act, he kind of disappears for a little bit and shows up at the end of the game.
Yeah.
And there's not a lot that goes on to show his relationship with Batman after the fact.
Yeah.
And that was really disappointing to me. So I was really excited that when they announced this comic, just to see what happened with this character and how he came to make the decisions that he made that led up to the game. And it was a really good issue. It didn't, obviously just issue 1, they're not going to blow their load with one issue. So it was a slow burn, but, it turns out the Arkham Knight was working with Hush and some other cool things. So I recommend picking that one up as well if you're into the game and into Batman mythology.
And if you're playing a drinking game, how many times we've said blow your load that you have taken 2 shots now? Anyways.
So
you're stealing all my material.
I know. We'll just count how many times we say blow our load in this episode.
Well, that's 3. Well, actually, technically 4, because I just said it as well. So 4 times.
So they're going to be blackout drunk by the end of the podcast.
Pretty much. I also, like you, was kind of disappointed that Arkham Knight didn't get as much backstory. You do kind of have a little bit with the Joker, and obviously I won't get too much into it, like you said, in case you haven't played the game yet. But there's a big gap in between what you see, the little backstory you see, and then the present day Arkham Knight stuff.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of interesting stuff, I'm sure, in there. I haven't read this comic yet, but judging by your miniature review there, it sounds like it's pretty good.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to see what they do with it and how long it goes.
All right, cool, man.
What are you reading, man?
Well, this shouldn't come as much of a surprise. I am a huge Spider-Man fan, and I've been really digging the Amazing Spider-Man Secret Wars stuff, especially Renew Your Vows.
Oh, yeah.
The 5th Renew Your Vows came out this past week. I was so excited for it. My wife would be pissed if she found this out, but I have a subscription through Marvel, but I always have to wait like 2 weeks. Well, it came out this past week. I bought it on Comixology as well.
Oh, yeah.
Just so I could read it real quick because I couldn't wait for this comic to come out. So essentially I bought it twice. So don't tell my wife. I'm not that worried about it because she doesn't listen to this. But if you're listening and you know my wife, please don't tell her. She'll be mad. Anyways.
We're grown men.
Yeah. We're grown men that are afraid of our wives.
and our allowance for comic books. Yeah.
Anyways, so obviously I've talked about this before. I'm a huge fan of this miniseries. I've really enjoyed seeing Peter Parker back with Mary Jane because in the Superior Spider-Man and then the Amazing Spider-Man leading up to Secret Wars, he wasn't. And at one point, way back when, they actually had a kid, but it didn't last very long. And so it's kind of nice to see this story the way I wanted to see it years ago. So that's been really refreshing. I've enjoyed Secret Wars just for that. Well, I mean, I've enjoyed other aspects of it, but I've really enjoyed Secret Wars because it allows all of these writers and artists to kind of go back and create stories that they didn't have an opportunity to do before. So I really appreciate that. The number 5, the storyline is kind of, if you're not already reading it, you should be, but the Regent, which is a villain, I don't know if it was created for Secret Wars or if he's a villain that's been in the comics before because I'm not familiar with him, but basically he is trying to he's basically this ultimate leader and he's trying to create this super hero. Basically he's collecting all of these superheroes and he's essentially killing them and draining their powers and using them to fight Doom, which kind of ties in with Secret Wars. It's really its only tie-in to what's going on in Secret Wars.
Which is why I think I like it so much.
Yeah. Well, anyways, you're wrong. But, and so in number 5, he's captured Peter and he brings him back to his secret hideout. What's left of the Avengers, they have the ability to teleport and they figure out where his hideout is, and so they teleport there. Mary Jane and their kid, who has the abilities of Spider-Man, come and kind of save the day, and it's really cool to see the whole family, Peter, Mary Jane, and their kid. I keep calling her their kid because I cannot remember her goddamn name. I apologize for that. And it was actually really cool because at certain aspects, not just in this issue, but in the series as a whole, you've kind of seen Peter kind of toe that line between what you're used to seeing from Spider-Man, because he's kind of like Batman. He doesn't kill anybody. He just lets the police do their job, and then eventually they break out and they have to do it all over again. But he never crosses that line, and you kind of see him toe that line because his family's in danger. So there's that added layer to the character that you're not used to seeing because he wasn't with Mary Jane and he didn't have a kid before. So I really appreciated that. And then there's a payoff at the end of number 5, which obviously I won't spoil, that kind of, it rewards your faith in him. Like you see something that he stays true to his character as we know it. And so I really appreciated that. I really liked this. I don't know if number 5 is the last. It seems like it would be because it kind of wrapped up everything that was going on.
Yeah, I want to say with all these Secret War tie-ins, 5 issues is what they're going for.
Yeah.
For most cases.
I'm almost positive that it's number 5. I just didn't want to say it for sure and be wrong. But anyways, it's really great. So check it out if you're not already reading it.
Yeah, I love it as well. I'm not caught up on it, but I think I have 3, 4, and 5 left to read, and they're all next on my to read list. I almost read them last night, but I ran out of time because we went and saw The Visit.
Yeah, you should have just read.
Awesome trailer.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. All right, so our next segment is just plainly called Nerd News. Tyler compiles all the nerd news. It's been really light the last really month, basically out of Comic-Con. Like a few months ago, it has not been great.
Yeah.
And I don't know what he's going to talk about, what we're going to talk about, because we feel like that makes a better episode. But I have a feeling that it's not that great this week either.
No, I mean, we'll just get into it.
Yeah, for sure.
So the director of Trick or Treat was out promoting his new movie Krampus, which looks... I haven't watched a trailer.
I have not either. My wife thinks it looks awesome, which is very strange.
I mean, I like the idea of it. I don't really get into horror movies around Christmas time, though, so I'm curious to see how that'll work, because I never really liked Black Christmas or anything like that. But I am looking forward to it in a sense. That being said, that's not the story. He was out promoting it, and he was asked about Trick or Treat 2, and he said it's definitely happening. It's just kind of been a slow burn, and he wanted to get Krampus made because he heard of some... or I guess the studio knew of other Krampus movies that were in development, and they
wasn't Kevin Smith trying to make one for a while there?
So they wanted to be the first to blow their load.
5.
And so they made that movie, but he is definitely still interested in making Trick or Treat 2. I know you're a fan of the first Trick or Treat.
Oh yeah, I love it. I didn't see it. I don't know if it was last Shocktober or it was Shocktober before. I had heard just wonderful things about it, and I finally got around to it, and it's fantastic. I liked it a lot.
It was one of those movies that I followed for the longest time when it was in development, because I love anthology movies like that, where it's just a bunch of short stories that interconnect, and it was pushed back for forever, and it eventually I think went direct to DVD and direct to Blu-ray, and it kind of gathered a cult following, and now it's kind of spawning the sequel, and everybody loves it. It's one of my favorite Halloween movies of all time. I adore it to death. So I'm really happy that he's considering making a second one. Of course, sequels usually don't live up to our expectations, but we'll see. Definitely looking forward to it.
For sure.
Okay, so there's a new King Kong movie coming out called, I believe it's called Skull Island.
Yep.
And Legendary basically... I forget who was going to be putting it out, but they shifted studios for this movie and shifted it to Warner Brothers. And now the gossip is that they're setting up for a Godzilla versus King Kong movie.
Yep.
So we reviewed the new Godzilla movie when it came out, right? And we both thought it was okay. I mean, it wasn't anything special. It wasn't terrible. What are your feelings concerning a King Kong versus Godzilla movie possibly happening?
It seems like it would be one of those things that 10-year-old Pat would be super excited about, but 28-year-old Pat, not so much.
I just don't see how you can do it and have a good story around it.
Yeah.
At a certain point, you have to realize what you're doing there and make a cheesy movie.
Yeah. And I'm so over everybody trying to have universes now.
Oh yeah. This is exactly what they're trying to say up to.
And what would it be? How long would we have to wait for this movie? Because obviously you would have to introduce King Kong again, because I'm assuming it's not going to be the Jack Black King Kong.
From what I understand.
Which is an excellent movie, by the way.
From what I understand, this is a prequel to King Kong.
Oh, yeah?
And I don't know if it's a prequel to Peter Jackson's King Kong or just the King Kong mythology in general, but Skull Island is supposedly a prequel to all that. So
yeah. So would you do Skull Island and then do Godzilla 2? And then do the Godzilla v. King Kong?
That's a lot of goddamn monsters, man. I don't know. Because you got Pacific Rim 2 coming out, too. Doesn't Legendary do Pacific Rim? Couldn't they kind of spin that into it as well? How fucking crazy would that be?
That would actually be pretty awesome.
It's Godzilla and King Kong are tearing down New York City or whatever the fuck. Like, we better get our fucking, what are they called? Reapers or rimmers or something?
Oh, I don't think it's called rimmers.
What are those called that they?
I think it's reapers. I think that's,
that's
now
not
all
right.
I can think of is rimmers. They're just going around giving rim jobs to Godzilla.
They're Pacific rimmers.
And, oh, God damn it. There's been too much shit talk on this. Literal shit talk.
All right. Well,
is that it?
I was going to ask who you would want to win in the fight, but I feel like that's kind of silly at this point.
Who's ever getting the rim job?
For what it's worth, I would root for King Kong. I don't know.
And for what it's worth, nobody wins in a rim job.
Well, you're not doing it right.
Anyways.
Okay. All right. Everything from this point on just seems like it doesn't matter. All right. So, did you read Animorphs growing up?
I did. I love those things.
Yeah. Well, they're looking. I guess Universal is looking to spin that franchise off into a movie.
Yep.
I fucking loved Animorphs, and I watched like the show on Nickelodeon that had Iceman in it, and
I didn't because it was on Nickelodeon.
Yeah, I know we actually had this conversation pretty recently.
Yeah.
But looking back on those books now as a
they're
grown
pretty
man,
fucking stupid.
Yeah, it's pretty bad, right?
Yeah.
So
that's not going to be good.
no, not at all. So it's kind of interesting. I guess maybe because they're putting out Goosebumps, right?
Yeah, and that actually looks kind of interesting.
I'm looking forward to it. I think it'll be a good, not scary movie because it's for kids, but it'd be a good Halloween themed movie for Shocktober. But I don't know that you could have that kind of luck with Animorphs.
No, it's going to be fucking stupid.
Yeah,
I'd be surprised if it eventually got made.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll just move on from that one. So this one I wanted to bring up just because I'm curious what your opinion is on the first two. So they're looking at making a Jeepers Creepers 3.
Yeah.
Have you seen the first two Jeepers Creepers movies?
I saw the first one. I hated it. I thought it was stupid.
Really?
Maybe I saw the second one. I don't think so. I think I've only seen the first one, and I didn't like it. I thought they were stupid.
I haven't seen them since like middle school or early high school, but I remember liking the second one. And I remember the first one had Justin Long in it.
He did.
And it ends with him getting his eyes taken out or whatever, and he's dead. Spoiler alert for a movie that's like 15 years old.
Yeah, fuck that. You don't have to say spoiler alert for that.
But I remember the second one, it was like this group of kids stuck on a bus, and the movie ends with basically they defeated this monster and is hanging.
Maybe I have seen the second one.
And is hanging up in this guy's barn, and he just sits there with a shotgun, and he's like waiting for, I forget, like this creature comes to life every so often, and he's like basically waiting for it to come back to life so he can put it back down or whatever. And I thought that was a really cool ending to the Jeepers Creepers 2, so, I mean, Jeepers Creepers 3, I'm sure would shit all over that, but,
yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. I'm not excited for it, but
No.
But I will probably see it, if I'm being honest.
I won't see it.
That's fair. All right, man. That is the slew of nerd news I have this week. I'll throw it in there. Christopher Nolan's directing a movie for Warner Brothers. It's going to come out in summer 2017. I didn't really bring it up because that's all we know about it. So
yeah.
What else can you say? I mean,
and I don't know. He's not one of those guys anymore for me.
After Interstellar?
Yeah.
That's it?
That was disappointing for me.
That's all it took?
Pretty much. I mean, Dark Knight Rises is good, but it's not The Dark Knight.
Yeah. I like that movie a lot, though.
I enjoy it. I'll watch it every once in a while.
I haven't watched it in so long. I was planning on watching it while I edit this weekend.
Okay, cool.
This episode we're literally recording right now.
Yeah.
So it's going to be really surreal for me if I'm editing this and I'm hearing myself talk about The Dark Knight Rises while I'm watching The Dark Knight Rises. So that little bit is just for me.
All right, cool.
All right, that's all I have, man.
All right, so our next segment, we've been doing this the last 3 episodes. Tyler and I have been going through our top 10 favorite movies of all time. I did my 5 through 1. It took me a second to remember what the numbers were. I did my top 5 through 1 last week, so we're going to finish out Tyler's list this week. So I'll just give it to him. It's all you, big guy.
Okay, so, I mean, we've said this every episode that we've done this. Pat and I definitely differentiate between best and favorite.
Yep.
And we've done our favorite movies of all time, not what we consider to necessarily be the best movies of all time. That being said, I'm going to go ahead and run down my 10 through 6 in case you missed that episode. Number 10 was About Time. Number 9 was Seven. Number 8 was The Thing. Number 7 was Toy Story 3. And number 6 was Back to the Future. I feel like my 5 through 1 is going to be a little bit more predictable than anything that was in the 10 through 6, but we'll see. So unless I'm missing anything to set me up, I'm just going to jump into it.
Go for it, man.
All right. So number 5 is Pulp Fiction.
Okay, cool.
So I think it's a pretty common consensus that Pulp Fiction is an amazingly well done movie. I mean, the performances in it are just fantastic, and it's like endlessly quotable. It's just like a fixture in pop culture and in film. I talked about it quite a bit in my 10 through 6 that a lot of the movies that I feel hold a certain place for me and why they're my favorites are in movies that I were introduced to in high school by my buddies as I was kind of growing into a film nerd. And this movie is no exception to that. I remember just sitting in awe of it the first time I saw it and just being like, what is this movie? I've never seen anything like it. And I never had at that point the way that the story just jumps all over the place, but interconnects and how one part of the movie can feel completely different than this other part. And it was just amazing. I actually watched it with my wife a couple weekends ago in preparation for kind of finding out where I wanted everything to fall on my list.
Sure.
And watching her watch it for the first time.
She never seen it before?
She says she had, but she kept asking questions, and my wife thinks she's seen stuff that she hasn't seen. And it was pretty apparent, like with this, that she had never seen it, and she got confused. Like maybe she saw John Travolta and Uma Thurman dancing on TV once, but she had never seen it. And just watching her kind of have her mind blown, the way I did 10 or 15 years ago was pretty satisfying. Like I said, it's really quotable, and my friends and I quoted it for forever. And when we get together, we still quote certain parts of it. It's just, I don't know. It's just, like I said, it's that fixture in pop culture that really still hangs with me. It's perfectly paced and balanced, and it's just, even though it's pretty long, it's a movie I could watch over and over because
for sure
there's such rich storytelling in it.
Yeah.
I mentioned that we distinguish between best and favorite, but this is a movie that I feel is on my favorite list, but then would also be on the top 10 best movies of all time.
I completely agree. It's a movie that almost made my list.
Yeah.
It was, I talked about this on my first episode. I had a list about like 29, and then I got it down to 14. This was on that 14 and just never made the cut. Cause like I said, we differentiate between favorite and best. And there was certain things that I personally connected to. There were certain movies that I connected to a little bit more than I did with this movie. But it's fantastic. It is definitely one of those movies that is just, it's one of those film classes type of movies where you show them and it's fantastically done. I mean, it's just a tour de force.
I mean, it's the pinnacle of film through the 90s.
Yeah, it's like the perfect 90s movie.
Oh, yeah, and the 90s is when you and I were growing up and watching movies and stuff like that, so I think that might be one of the reasons that it holds a special place for us, besides the fact that it's just an amazingly well-done movie.
Yeah, for sure, and it was one of the first movies, if not the first movie, that I saw that was cut the way it was, and honestly, I saw it when it first came out, and I was kind of confused. Like, I'll be honest, but I was also, when did this come out in 94? Yeah, it came out in 94 because it lost to Forrest Gump as well as The Shawshank Redemption. And so I was, 7?
You saw Pulp Fiction when you were 7 years old.
Yes, I did.
That's insane, man. not that like I don't respect that you let your parents let you watch whatever. Like, I don't have a problem with that, but I would not be able to follow this movie when I was.
Yeah, I was super confused. Yeah, for sure. But I mean, it was one of those first movies that it was kind of my introduction to like not to movies in general, but just like, this is what a movie can do. Yeah. Sort of thing. And the more we talk about it, the more I wish I had put it on my list, but really? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's always going to hold that spot for me just because it is what it is, held on such a high pedestal, and I hold it there as well.
Sure.
Okay. So we'll move on to number 4. Number 4 for me is The Departed.
Okay.
So I feel like The Departed is one of the best gangster movies of all time. And
for sure.
I'm a sucker for gangster movies. And this one in particular does everything in it so well. There's just amazing performances, and like Pulp Fiction, to me, it was endlessly quotable.
Oh yeah.
The Boston accents definitely play a large part in that, because there's nothing more fun than putting on a Boston accent and saying some of the crazy shit that like Alec Baldwin says in this movie. But, like I said, amazing performances. Like, this cast is stellar. Like, you have Martin Sheen, Leo DiCaprio, Matt Damon, Mark Wahlberg, Alec Baldwin, like Jack Nicholson. How did I even almost forget to put him in there? Like, it's just an amazing movie, and it was the movie that got Martin Scorsese his Oscar, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it also won Best Picture as well.
Yeah, and I was so happy when it won Best Picture. I forget what it was up against that year, but I was nervous about it not winning.
Yeah, it was one of the few in the last like 10 years that I was like, I was really, really happy that it won.
I want to say that people were saying that it wouldn't win Best Picture because of the way things unravel in the end with a lot of character deaths. And that made me a little nervous because I loved it so much. I love the twists and turns throughout this movie, especially as it pertains to the character deaths that I was talking about, and then character allegiance. You don't really know who's doing what and why, and you obviously know what kind of side Matt Damon and Leo DiCaprio's characters are on, but everything else is kind of unravels as the plot moves along. I remember seeing this movie in theaters with my buddy Jake, and then the next weekend, him and I went and saw The Prestige, and it was like the best 1-2 punch of going to the movies, I think, ever. It was just blown away by one movie, and then, I mean, The Prestige isn't on my top 10, but it's still a movie I love, and I remember loving it so much when it came out, and just seeing those movies back to back was insane. And, you know, in the end, I could see how some people might not hold this movie in such high regards, or maybe more forgettable, because it's really long and it's really plot heavy. But to me, it never gets old. Like, I'll watch it. I'll watch it a couple times a year. And I hate relying on this throughout my top 10 list. But again, I remember watching this with my wife for the first time she had ever seen it. It was actually while we were dating. And just watching her mind be blown at the end when certain characters were dying and things kind of unraveled. It was just like, that's exactly how I felt at that time. And it was so captivating. And it's a movie I really love.
This was another one of those 29 movies that didn't make the cut to my list as well. It's fantastic. I mean, pretty much everything that you just said. I don't think we're ever gonna see a performance like that from Mark Wahlberg again.
Oh yeah, I was in love with Mark Wahlberg after this movie. I remember going to see Shooter because Mark Wahlberg was in it and being like, "What the fuck was that?"
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it's a case of the material. Just being awesome and him just kind of rising to the occasion, and everybody kind of rising to the occasion.
He was nominated for an Oscar for this movie.
Really?
For supporting actor. Yeah.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure I did know that. I just forgotten about it.
That will never happen for him again.
No, that was his best shot.
Yep.
But you mentioned it's super quotable. I think I ask my brother every time he orders a cranberry juice if he's on his period, whether or not we're on public or not. So it's super quotable, and I mean, I just love the movie. Basically everything that you just said.
I think at least once a week I say, maybe yes, maybe no, maybe fuck yourself. I love that part. But yeah, amazing movie. I'll watch it over and over.
For sure.
It just hits all the right notes for me. Anything else?
Nope.
For The Departed? All right. So we're going to move from the second best gangster movie of all time, in my opinion, to number 3, which is my favorite gangster movie of all time, which is The Godfather, which used to be my favorite movie of all time for the longest time. And just recently, especially putting this list together, I kind of bumped it down a little bit. But it's one of those movies, again, introduced to in high school. And to me, it's the pinnacle of American filmmaking. I hold it in very high regard. And I remember just having to see it whenever we were going through all these films that we were binging. I believe it was sophomore year of high school. We rented it, and I fell in love with it. Immediately went out and bought the Godfather trilogy the next day, and just watched it over and over after seeing it for the first time. Not only does it hold a place in my top 10 for that, but it's also like everyone on my mom's side of the family, it's like their favorite movie. My mom is of Italian ancestry. And her dad was 100% Italian, and he loved this movie when he was alive. And my uncles love this movie, and everybody quotes it and loves it and talks about it all the time. So even though I was late to seeing it, I kind of jumped on that bandwagon with them after I had seen it, and it was kind of like a thing that we shared a certain camaraderie with. Like I said, to me, it's the best mob and gangster movie of all time. It did so because it was written by Mario Puzo, who wrote the book, and that book is one of my favorite books of all time as well. It just had excellent source material to work with. We keep talking about casts in Pulp Fiction and The Departed, and this movie has one of the best, probably the best cast of all time. I mean, just iconic actors all together in this movie delivering iconic performances. And, you know, watching Michael Corleone's arc through this movie and through Godfather Part 2 is just heart-wrenching. And, you know, it has the same thing in common with Pulp Fiction and Departed in that it's very long and very plot-heavy. But anytime I watch it, I don't feel exhausted or feel like I'm ready to skip to the good parts. It's has excellent pacing, and the story is just amazing to me. So, Godfather, you're itching to talk about, I guess, how much you don't like this movie, so I'll let you.
No, it's not about that I don't like it. I understand everything that you just said.
Yeah.
I just don't get it. Like,
Yeah,
I just
and that's
don't.
fair.
I've seen all the movies. Because I'm
sorry you saw Part 3.
Well, I'm kind of sorry that I saw all of them. No, I'm just kidding, of course. No, I understand why people like these movies, and they are fantastically made. The acting is great. The writing is great. I just don't get it. It's one of those things that I just don't understand why people love it so much. And I just thought the fact that this is number 3, just your list so far, I think tells a lot about you, because so far your 5, 4, 3 have all been gangster movies.
So what? I'm a gangster?
I guess. I guess.
No, I have a soft spot for gangster. I love a good gangster film.
Yeah.
And so I mean, there are no more throughout. Well, I guess you could maybe argue a little bit that one of my top 2 has some gangster qualities in it. But, yeah, those are my 3 favorite gangster films of all time, I guess you'd say. So, maybe in a year I'd space them out a little differently, but,
yeah.
They're just the movies that I can watch over and over.
Yeah, for sure.
And still love.
Yeah, like I said, I understand why you and people love this movie. I just don't get it. I've seen it. My dad has watched it probably 1,000,000 times. We used to have this on VHS, and it's so long that it was one of those VHSs that with 2 VHSs,
Yeah.
you had to put the other one in. So, yeah, that's how many times I've seen this movie.
Yeah. I mean, that's fair. I don't think you're alone in that. I think that a lot of people, especially maybe from our generation, look back on it and like, yeah, I mean, it's not bad, but I just don't get the acclaim.
Yeah,
but for me,
sure.
I don't know. Just not only did it hit all the right notes for me and kind of stand out whenever I first saw it, but I think that I had that pressure from an entire half of my family saying, this is the movie.
Yeah.
Especially growing up and after I had seen it in high school, and just kind of, like I said, the camaraderie there, it's just always stuck with me.
Yeah, for sure.
I love the universe of The Godfather. And,
yeah.
Love the books, and there was a Godfather game that I played that was kind of fun, and it's just like one of those things I can't get enough of.
Yeah. Okay.
Cool.
Yep. That's all I got.
All right, man. Number 2, speaking of universes I love, this is the big one for me, Return of the Jedi.
Okay. I was wondering where this one was coming up.
Yeah. And it was tough to either place this at 2 or 1, honestly. And like you, I'm using Return of the Jedi as a placeholder for the original Star Wars trilogy as a whole, which I hold near and dear to my heart, as you do. I remember distinctly when I was introduced to these movies in 2nd grade and how it impacted my childhood. Like, after seeing Star Wars, that's what my life became. Like, action figures, bed sheets, as embarrassing as that is, just everything about my life was Star
I had
Wars.
Spider-Man bed sheets up until college. I mean, up until and through college.
I mean, I keep saying and that's just, I guess I'm getting really excited about it, but my life was Star Wars for the longest time, and it still is in a certain sense. I was transfixed by anything pertaining to this universe, and I was like a Star Wars prodigy. I was a young kid, and I knew everything there was to know about anything that had come in those first 3 movies. And then obviously a few years later after I got into it, they expanded everything with The Phantom Menace and so on and so forth. But for me, it was always about those original three, as it is for everyone.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not anything special.
I'm guessing that you knew everything about Star Wars, but you didn't know everything there was to know about vaginas.
That is correct. And I would still argue that I do not.
That's what I hear.
Why is my wife telling you that?
I'm kidding. That would be such an awkward conversation.
So Return of the Jedi is not the best of the three movies. So we keep talking about differentiating between best and favorite. I am not arguing that it is the best of the three. Of course, Empire Strikes Back is the best of the three. And I even went as far as to thinking about putting Empire Strikes Back into this slot, but I would be turning my back on the movie that I really fell in love with as a kid. So I chose to keep it as Return of the Jedi. It was always my favorite as a kid. And honestly, I was never too bothered by the Ewoks. Like growing up now and going back and watching it, I roll my eyes a little bit, but in second grade, it didn't faze me at all.
Yeah, the Ewoks were cool as shit when you were a little kid.
Yeah.
And then you realize the older that you get,
yeah,
it's not good.
So there's this girl I work with. She had never seen the Star Wars movies. And I mentioned on our last episode that we were leading up to Force Friday at the retailer I work at.
Yeah.
We were releasing all these Star Wars toys, and we had like a whole section of the store designated to Star Wars. So she and her husband watched the original three in anticipation for it. And her husband had never seen it. And I know, but he fell in love with it. And she said that they were pretty good, but she loved the teddy bears is what she said.
Oh my God.
So that kind of puts it in perspective a little bit. But again, it was just like that, those things, like you said, when you're a kid, it doesn't really bother you. And I can kind of look past it now as well. The reason I think that this was my favorite of the three, though, was because of the sequence on Jabba's barge and the sequence throughout his palace at the beginning.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome.
The rescuing of Han Solo. I think that is probably the most badass sequence in any of the Star Wars movies.
Not the pod race?
Not the pod race. It was just my favorite part, like when Luke jumps off the I guess it's like a diving board and he's into the Sarlacc pit and turns around and springboards off of it and does a flip, and R2 shoots out his lightsaber. Like, if I could have got boners in second grade, like that would have given me a boner. Like,
you couldn't get a boner in second grade?
I don't remember. Maybe I got boners, maybe I didn't. But that was like the most badass. You
definitely couldn't blow your load in second grade, though.
No,
that's 6.
No, I love the redemption in the movie, the redemption of Vader and the fall of the Emperor at his hands. And, you know, I talked about how the girl at work recently watched the Star Wars movies, and it turns out a lot of the people I work with aren't really into Star Wars, and they're not nerds, and Star Wars has been a hot topic, as of late with us getting all this merchandise and it being such a big deal at the retailer I work at. And I've actually been kind of forced to explain my love for Star Wars to them because they don't get it. And
that's weird. That's a weird thing to have to explain.
Well, I didn't have to explain it, but you know, everybody's talking about how they don't understand it, and you're the one person there that is in love with the mythology, and you're kind of talking about it. Yeah. And it was really hard to put into words how made up characters and made up plots and made up everything kind of impacted your life. But, you know, for me, it has molded me into the pop culture aficionado I am, and it kind of set me on the path of things I like and what I like now and what I'm into now and who I am now as a nerd on the nerd you're looking for. So, in my opinion, Star Wars is the most important thing to ever happen in pop culture and pop history.
I'd agree with that. You did say something a while back, and instead of bringing it up, I decided to make that joke instead. You said that Empire was the best movie. I don't agree with that.
Oh, really?
Empire is my favorite of the three, and I talked about it. I think it was number 6 or 7, something like that.
Yeah.
On my list, I actually think the first one is the best movie from start to finish as its own movie, as a self-contained story.
Oh, if you say self-contained story, then yes, because Empire...
They have the Jedi and Empire need each other to exist.
Yeah.
The first one doesn't need anything to exist. I mean, it's such a, I think from start to finish, it is a better movie. If we were making best of a list, I think that's the best movie, but my favorite is Empire.
Yeah. I mean, I totally get your point. I think that the more common consensus though is that Empire is the best made of the three.
Okay.
But whatever. Return of the Jedi is my favorite, so
All right.
that's why it's number 2. All right, number 1. If you know anything about me, you can probably guess my number 1 without me even having to say it. It's the glaring thing that's been missing from my top 10 so far, and that is The Dark Knight.
Yep.
So Batman is my favorite character in all of pop culture, and I feel like he has the deepest background and the deepest stories of any superhero. And that being said, this movie does the character a lot of justice, as well as just being a fucking awesome movie as well. I'm probably not going to talk actually as much about this movie as I have about some of my past ones, just because we've talked about this movie to death. I mean, Pat, you mentioned whenever it popped up on your list that it's not necessarily a superhero movie. It's a crime movie that happens to feature Batman, and that is 100% accurate. Like the other movies I've mentioned on this list, this movie does not get old in the slightest.
No,
like I can watch this movie over and over and over, and never once have I noticed something and been like, I wish that part was a little different, or, I wish that they had done this different. Like, it's a perfect movie, in my opinion.
For sure.
And it's just so hard to define with a genre because it's a little bit of everything that I love. I mean, it does have that little bit of a gangster movie quality. And
yeah, for sure.
And the crime movie.
Batman Begins have a little bit more of that.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, but Dark Knight still definitely has it.
And I mean, I don't want to hang on this too long because there's nothing to be said about Heath Ledger's performance that hasn't already been said. But
for sure,
not only Heath Ledger in this movie, like everybody delivers great performances except for maybe Maggie Gyllenhaal.
Yeah,
who's a little off in a few scenes.
I thought she was a step up from Katie Holmes, though. I just think they were both miscast.
That's like saying that this piece of shit is a little bit. Okay, she's not a piece of shit. This piece of shit acting is a little better than this piece of shit acting.
No, you said Katie Holmes was a piece of shit. Everybody heard you. Katie Holmes is a piece of shit, said Tyler.
I mean, I'm not going to fight it that much. I mean, what is somebody out there, a really big Katie Holmes fan, is going to get pissed off that I said something like that. No, but this movie also is one of the best movie-going experiences I've ever had. You and I were there together, and I know it might have not been the best movie-going experience for you, but for me, it's like I had all my buddies from high school, and you were there as well, my new friend who
was separated from you.
That was not my choice. It was actually kind of a debacle, if you remember correctly, because we were supposed to.
I remember.
We were going to go to the midnight showing, and the theater we went to was packed. Yeah. They said, there's this other theater that's showing it. You guys can go over there.
Oh, I fucking forgot about this.
Went to it, and it turned out it was like the 12:30 showing, so we had to wait like an extra half hour. And it ended up not being too big of a deal because we got better seats out of it.
I left. We left.
Did we not actually even watch it together?
No, we did not. I am just now remembering this.
I
remember
like
we got, now I have a bone to pick with you for now. Is because we got there early. Me and, one of my ex-girlfriends, super bitch. We got there and we got really good seats and she was already like a bummer. And you got there late. Well, not late, but later than we did, per usual. You're the worst about getting to movies on time.
I would have been there early yesterday if it weren't for the lines out the door.
Yeah, whatever. Anyways. And you guys got really shitty seats. So you were just like, oh, well, I heard that there's this other movie that another theater that they're playing the midnight showing and there's nobody in there. I was like, all right, whatever, we'll go. And I mean, we already have good seats here, but if it's empty, we'll go. And then we ended up it was like the 12:30 showing and we were like, she was already mad that we were going to the midnight showing and she had to work in the morning. So I was just like, fuck, I had to go. And so we went back and we got the worst seats. We were like second row to the right. And so we were looking up to the left. It was bad.
We had awesome seats.
Go fuck yourself.
We had to wait like an extra half hour. But, no, it wasn't just the best movie going experience because I fucked you over and it was there with like a huge group of people that loved the movie. Like, never once have me and my friends gotten out of a movie and had a general consensus of either liking it or disliking it. Everyone fucking loved this movie when we were through with it. And, I think that probably sticks to this day. But not only that, like, I remember just being on the edge of my seat the entire time. Like, especially the part with the boats being triggered to explode.
Yeah,
like,
for sure.
I had no idea what was going to happen there. And I was just like, oh my God, how's Batman going to save the day?
Yeah.
And it was oh my gosh, just awesome. Just an awesome movie going experience. I saw it like 4 more times in theaters before it left, and it's just still up there for me to this day. I mean, it's my favorite movie of all time.
Yeah, for sure.
The Dark Knight. That is it. That is my 10 through 1. It's kind of bittersweet to have put it out there, but that is it, man.
Yeah, it was nerve-wracking going into it because we've talked a lot about this. It means a lot to us, and we appreciate you guys listening and kind of putting up with 4 really self-indulgent episodes. Yeah. But we've really enjoyed it, and like we've mentioned before, I think it was kind of important now that we've built this audience, which we appreciate you guys listening to us each week, that we give you an idea of what films that we like. For example, Tyler loves gangster movies. And so when we review a gangster movie in a year from now or whenever.
Black Mass that comes out next week.
Yeah.
I don't think we're reviewing it.
No, we're not
bringing it up when I see it.
Yeah. Okay. You know that Tyler kind of has an affinity for these movies to begin with.
I didn't know I was going to like put myself in a corner with my list.
No, but that was kind of one of the things that I was looking forward to, is like we were going to be able to give our audience a kind of a look into our brains and kind of understand a little bit better where we're coming from when we say we're giving this movie this many stars, that you kind of better understand a little bit more where we're coming from. And I enjoyed listening to your list. I hope that you enjoyed listening to mine. Like we said before, we didn't know what each other were going to say. I knew he hadn't done The Dark Knight yet, so I kind of assumed that was going to be the one he brought up at number 1, but it was just kind of fun as a listener to listen to your list, and I was really looking forward to it.
Likewise, man.
All right, so our last segment each episode, we like to bookend it with a particular question. We always think it's really fun and nerdy to ask what our favorite blank is. This week it's my turn. We switch off each week, and since we just reviewed The Visit earlier in the episode, neither one of us liked it, but it is an M. Night movie. I'm not even going to try to pronounce his last name.
Shyamalan.
I figured, obviously, we'll just talk about our favorite M. Night movie. I'm going to go first. Like I mentioned before in our Visit review, I have not seen his first 2 movies, Praying with Anger and Wide Awake.
So I'll say I haven't seen those either, and I also have not seen After Earth, Avatar.
I guess I do have to say that.
Or Lady in the Water.
I think it's The Lady in the Water, but whatever.
Well, whatever the fuck it is, I haven't seen it.
I also should have mentioned that I haven't seen After Earth or The Last Airbender, which was his as well.
Yeah, sorry.
I forgot. I forgot about those 2 movies just because after The Happening, he didn't exist to me. Anyways, so it won't be The Happening either. That's probably one of the worst movies I've ever seen. But anyways.
Oh, yeah, it's awful.
For me, the first movie of his that I saw was, of course, The Sixth Sense. That was a phenomenon. Everybody loved it. It kind of put him on the map. But that is not my favorite of his movies. My favorite of his movies is actually, I believe it was Unbreakable was his next movie, which I do enjoy. That is a good one as well. But the follow-up to Unbreakable was Signs. I love Signs. Still to this day, even though I don't like him and he's kind of a running joke with film buffs like ourselves, I defend this movie. I also defend The Village too. I think that movie gets shit on as well, and I think that's a good movie as well.
I need to revisit it. I haven't seen it since I saw it in theaters.
Yeah, I might watch it for Shocktober. But anyways, Signs is a great movie because it's an alien movie, but it's not about aliens. Like the aliens are they take second stage to the family drama of a family trying to get over the fact that they lost their mother, and the husband lost his wife, and he's trying to get over the fact, he's lost his faith essentially. And it's just a really powerful family drama. And then the third act with the aliens is really well done as well.
Yeah, for sure. I'll talk about a different movie to keep the conversation going, but if I was being honest, Signs would be my favorite M. Night Shyamalan movie as well. I think it's the most effective horror movie he did. And then, like you said, just the character growth and the character study and story throughout it is phenomenal. That being said, I do really like Unbreakable, but I've only seen it once. So I don't feel like I've seen it enough to say that that's like my second favorite of his films. So I'm going to go ahead and say Sixth Sense. Just because it's a fixture in pop culture and that movie does a lot of great things. The movie going experience, I saw that in theaters when it came out, and I actually went with a group of friends. We were in like 5th grade, I think. And it was for my buddy Mike's birthday party. And, just watching, one of my friends, Ryan, kind of freak out and not be, really good with scary movies, and he tried to go to sleep, and it was just kind of funny. And I'm sure the other people in the theater hated us because we were 5th grade boys seeing The Sixth Sense, but that was like
you guys were the assholes in the visit last night.
Oh, but we didn't shriek like the girls did last night.
Was awful.
But yeah, I think that might have been my first horror movie in theaters.
Oh yeah.
So it kind of holds a special place for me that way, and I remember being terrified. And, kind of peeking through my fingers a few times. So I would say Sixth Sense definitely holds a certain spot for me as far as his filmography goes. But I would say Signs.
For sure. I like The Sixth Sense. I actually think I've only seen that movie one time.
Really?
After you kind of see that plot twist, it's hard for me to sit down and watch that movie because I feel like you would just be picking it apart the whole time.
Yeah.
Does somebody recognize, acknowledge that he's there and that sort of thing? And,
for me, I think just everything that Bruce Willis has ever been in has been tainted by the stories that I've heard on Hollywood Babylon from Kevin Smith.
That's true.
But, I'm going to probably watch it for Shocktober. I haven't seen it in a few years.
Yeah, for sure. All right. So that'll about do it for this episode. I hope you guys enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun for Tyler and I, at least. As always, you can follow us on Twitter at The Nerds Podcast. Like us on Facebook. Follow us on Google+. Check out our website, thenerdspodcast.com, where I'm reviewing every episode of the FX series, The Strain. So check those out. Email us at thenerdsyou'relooking@gmail.com. Vote for us for Podcast of the Month at podcastland.com. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, The Nerds You're Looking For. Rate, review, subscribe, all that good stuff on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, basically any podcatcher that you use, we're on it. And I think that's it.
Absolutely, man.
For Patrick Kuhn,
Tyler Hunt,
we are The Nerds You're Looking For. Take it easy, guys.
See you guys later.
I fucking murdered that outro. I slaughtered it.